to fraud prevention leading up to the 2024 election. But instead of addressing that, Mr. Morelli decides to talk about a Chinese man gambling in a casino. Another fact, ActBlue took action despite detecting at least 22 significant fraud campaigns on its platform in recent years. Instead of addressing that, Mr. Raskin wanted to talk about some Texan buying pajamas. Another, in the wake of the 2024 election, almost the entirety of ActBlue's legal and compliance department was either fired, resigned, or left the company, alleging retaliation for highlighting vulnerabilities and unseriousness in addressing fraudulent donations.
Welcome back to the show. What you are about to see is a masterclass in why the left is absolutely terrified of originalist, constitutionally minded judges. We are looking at a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing where Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal completely abandons any serious discussion of constitutional law, judicial temperament, or legal track records. Instead, he decides to weaponize his time by demanding a political purity test from the judicial nominees sitting before him, repeatedly badgering them with the exact same political question: who won the 2020 election? This matters because it exposes a massive double standard in Washington. Democrats claim they want an independent judiciary, yet the moment they get the microphone, they demand these nominees act like partisan pundits. They want a soundbite, they want a headline, but what they actually got was a stone wall of pure professionalism. These nominees understand something the radical left completely rejects. A judge's job is to rule on the law and the facts of a specific case, not to audition for cable news. Watch how these nominees refuse to take the bait, keeping their composure while a sitting United States Senator visibly loses his patience. If you want honest, conservative analysis that exposes the mainstream media spin and defends the Constitution, smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications right now.
Serious allegations that have been made against ActBlue, and they're exceptional in these allegations, and either they're true or they're not. And this is part of what we're here trying to determine. But what is amazing to me is my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have not addressed one of these allegations. If I was you, I'd be a little offended because not a single one of them has come to your defense. Every one of them have deflected to something else. Let's look a little bit at some of the allegations. In fact, ActBlue, in its own words, decided to take a, quote, more lenient approach to fraud prevention leading up to the 2024 election. But instead of addressing that, Mr. Morelli decides to talk about a Chinese man gambling in a casino. Another fact, ActBlue took action despite detecting at least 22 significant fraud campaigns on its platform in recent years. Instead of addressing that, Mr. Raskin wanted to talk about some Texan buying pajamas. Another, in the wake of the 2024 election, almost the entirety of ActBlue's legal and compliance department was either fired, resigned, or left the company, alleging retaliation for highlighting vulnerabilities and unseriousness in addressing fraudulent donations. Instead of addressing that or clarifying that, Mr. Garcia wanted to talk about the president's slush fund, even though which he left off as President Obama had the same type of fund called the Keeps Eagle Fund. How did that help you in your position here? What that shows me is they're not willing to defend against these allegations because likely they know that they're true. This is called deflection. This is politics at its ugliest and its dirtiest. So I do have a series of questions for you, but I want to make sure I'm respectful. Is it Ms. Jones or Ms. Wallace-Jones?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Okay, wow, okay, didn't expect that one. But I think I see where this is going. Let me go ahead and ask questions. What role do you play in the process of Act Blue? Well, let me back up. I think I want to ask these first. Ms. Wallace-Jones, has the FEC ever completed an audit of Act Blue during the 2020 election cycle?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Okay, I just want to bring up, Mr. Chairman, that was a simple yes or no. There's no allegation in that. It was just whether an audit of Act Blue took place in the 2020 election cycle. Does Act Blue have an application programming interface with the FEC database?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Okay. This committee just passed bipartisan legislation that requires donors to include their CVV or CVC when donating to a political campaign online. The committee originally passed the same legislation last Congress and pointed out that Act Blue did not require the CVV for online donations. Soon after that, Act Blue changed its policies to require the CVV. What was that decision connected to what this committee was doing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
All right. What role do you play in the process of Act Blue changing fraud prevention policies, such as requiring a CVV or increasing the thresholds for risk tolerance?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Mr. Chairman, it appears that since I can't even, her name is protected under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I don't think.
And we are back. Folks, if you ever needed a clear, undeniable picture of what is wrong with the modern judicial confirmation process, you just saw it. Let's break down exactly what happened here. Senator Blumenthal stands up and rather than asking about legal precedents, statutory interpretation, or their philosophies on limited government, he leads with a hyper-partisan political trap. He demands that these judicial nominees give a definitive political commentary on the 2020 election. But notice the absolute poise of these nominees. They didn't stutter, they didn't panic, they didn't get defensive. Instead, they relied on the bedrock principle of judicial ethics. They calmly explained that as prospective judges, it is fundamentally inappropriate for them to offer personal political opinions on matters that could be tied to ongoing or future litigation, or to step outside their role as neutral arbiters. In fact, they brilliantly cited the exact same precedent set by left-leaning nominees like Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who previously noted that it is improper for a judicial nominee to weigh in on subjects of sharp political debate. That is the strongest moment of this entire exchange. Why? Because it completely exposed the senator's strategy. When nominees give a textbook, ethically correct answer, what does Blumenthal do? He gets irritated. He openly mocks them, claiming they're reading from a script or giving canned and Orwellian answers. Think about the irony of that for a second. A politician accusing a judge of following a script because the judge refuses to follow judicial ethics. It's a complete inversion of reality. Conservatives watching this should be incredibly proud of these nominees. They demonstrated exactly what a textualist, originalist judge is supposed to be: neutral, calm, and entirely insulated from the political winds of the day. A judge is not elected to be a political commentator. Their job is to look at the evidence presented within the four corners of a courtroom and apply the law as written by the legislature. The policy and political implications here are massive. If the left succeeds in turning judicial confirmations into a political circus, where nominees must pledge allegiance to specific political narratives just to get confirmed, judicial independence is dead. We would no longer have a branch dedicated to the rule of law. We would have a third legislative chamber wearing robes. How does this affect public opinion? To the radical left, Blumenthal's badgering might look like a tough cross-examination, but to everyday Americans who are exhausted by the relentless politicization of everything in this country, it looks like pure political grandstanding. It shows a complete lack of respect for the separation of powers. When you compare the senators' agitated rhetoric against the cool, measured facts presented by the nominees regarding their ethical boundaries, it's clear who won this exchange. The nominees didn't just survive the trap, they neutralized it by standing firmly on constitutional principles. Ultimately, this hearing proves that our fight for the courts is working. We need judges who respect the boundaries of their office, who refuse to be bullied by partisan politicians, and who understand that their loyalty belongs to the United States Constitution, not a political party platform. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Did these nominees handle the pressure correctly? Until next time, stay free.